2017, 2018, 2019, Bitcoin cryptocurrency is seen as just for money laundering and, terrorist groups and lots of bad actors, right? They didn't see the potential back then.
I feel like you probably started with a lot of people around you, and a lot of people got out of the industry because they were like, well, financial institutions don't believe in it. They hate it.
Yeah.
They hate us.
Yeah.
What kept you going?
I think still the utopia view of potential decentralization is probably what kept me going. Nowadays, everyone is suddenly becoming an expert because it's so easy to say that online because no one's verifying it, right? No one's checking. But I still think like real experts are people who have dived in the topic at length and probably study it over a certain period of time as well. LinkedIn continues to be the number one like social engineering attack vector for companies. And I think not a lot of people are paying attention to the risk on LinkedIn.
Marisa, thank you so much for being here with us today. Starting a company is hard. Doing it in emerging tech is even harder. Changing the way people, think and do stuff, super hard. So very excited to talk with you about who you are, what you do, and why people should look more deeply in, Joba Networks. Before we get into that, like, who is Marisa? Tell us maybe a little bit more about you, your background, and the journey that led you here.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and nice to meet you guys. My name is Marisa. My journey, basically growing up, I'm half Japanese, half American. I grew up in the United States, grew up going to Hoshiko every Saturday in Japan, learning Japanese, and going to Nagasaki during the summers to practice my Japanese even more. When I graduated college, I moved to Tokyo, starting my career at BlackRock, starting in, traditional finance space, and was super excited to come to Japan and, slowly got, deeper into making friends, going to a lot of tech events, crypto events back in the days. And that's kind of what got me into the crypto space. And then, now I founded my own company called Joba. So excited to share more.
Awesome. What got you, I guess, interested in finance in the first place?
What got me interested in finance was really about how economies worked. So I studied economics and Japanese as a double major at the University of Texas. And as a kid, going back to Japan every year, there were moments in my childhood where Japan was always ahead. Japan always had the latest phones, and US was always felt like it was behind. So then a certain point in time around 2005, 2006, when we were going to Japan, Japan stopped being leading edge. From 26 to 2012, I felt like Japan was always the same. Meanwhile, the US was progressing. So this inflection point that I noticed was really what drove my curiosity into studying economy and understanding what's happening in Japan, what's happening in the global economy. So that's what led me into finance.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so basically about a year into BlackRock, like, what was it working there? Because, BlackRock is obviously a big name.
Yeah. I think being at the largest asset manager gave a lot of really great perspectives on how money moves around the world, right? Given that majority of BlackRock's clients are, big pension funds, big government entities, to be able to manage their assets, produce a return back to the people, and then be paid for Social Security, et cetera. Understanding how those mechanics worked was super interesting from a high level. And then also understanding different types of financial products and what makes up a fund, different ways to structure a fund, everything from fixed income, equities, ETFs to new financial products that were coming up in alternatives. That was super exciting for me to understand at a broad scale what type of financial products were out there.
Interesting. And so basically then, because you start then, I guess, hearing about crypto, and since the curiosity is broadened by all those financial products, you looked into crypto. Like, why did you feel curious about that space?
Actually, I discovered crypto actually a little bit even before BlackRock. So as I was studying economics and Japanese, I was really looking into what different types of products are out there to change economic levers. And that was when I actually discovered, the Bitcoin white paper of this new economy. So actually in university, I discovered blockchain. And then my final paper was actually implementation of blockchain in Japan. So I was really interested in how do you implement this technology at an economic scale.
Mm.
So that's, where it kind of started. And then once I got to Japan, um, just I was driving my curiosity by learning more about these blockchain technologies while at BlackRock as well. So
What got you excited about, I guess, blockchain and Bitcoin, and like what did you see in there that you were like,
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
this is something that
I
can really
mean,
help?
for Bitcoin, when I read the white paper, it made total sense to me because, like I said, as a kid going back and forth, every month before even going back to Japan, I remember my parents being on the phone, calling the bank and saying, we need to transfer US dollars to Japanese yen. This process would take at least like 2 or 3 weeks before we would
Wow.
leave for Japan. And I just remember that was a very painful process of dealing with banks. And so when I read the Bitcoin white paper, I was like, this is a peer-to-peer system that is global, and it makes 100% sense to me. And I want to be part of it, right? So, the ease of use, the decentralized manner, the low transaction fees, the speed of being able to operate this new system outside of banking is what really attracted me to Bitcoin.
Yeah, you saw your family struggling with those things. I guess the urgency, like you say, you need your money to travel and stuff,
Yeah,
and so
yeah,
you
yeah,
really see it happening
yeah.
with the people
And
that
then
you care about, your parents.
Yeah. And then whenever I started doing some research into like implementation of blockchain or understanding Bitcoin better, I found that a lot of it started in Japan with Mt. Gox. And, Japan is starting to be the first country to regulate cryptocurrency. And so I kind of looking into that a little bit deeper to, broadly understand it. So that's what
Interesting.
initially got me hooked. Yeah.
Yeah, walk us through the journey maybe in crypto, like that led you to now, right?
Yeah, yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, it started very much as more like research and, enthusiasm, I guess, to understand better what could be the potential repercussions. Back then is all like technical documents. There was nothing about business use cases because it was more about node operating, et cetera, mining.
Mm.
But still, I was, intrigued. And then to kind of get my hands dirty, I started investing in ICOs in 2017. And then that's
What's an
also,
ICO, just for the people who
yeah,
don't know?
yeah, initial coin offering. So I would be reading new white papers that would come up every day. I would download them to my computer, read them on the train, and try to understand what are these new like disruptions that are trying to happen. So, very, pure way of looking at white papers back then, because I was interested in, decentralized
When
crowdfunding.
was that roughly? Like,
Early 2017.
okay,
Yeah. So Binance did their ICO in like summer of 2017. And
yeah,
then right after he had done his ICO, CZ came to Japan as well. And like, we would meet different founders as they were rising their ICO in Tokyo as they would
wow.
come
You've
around.
seen this like really
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
start
yeah.
from the beginning, because
Yeah.
I'm someone who got into, I guess, crypto purely as an investor, but like
Yeah.
2018, 19, it was already pretty mature.
Yeah. Yeah.
How was it back then? Like, you have all those white papers. Like, first of all, in terms of volume, was it like you probably saw it growing, all those
Yeah, yeah,
projects
yeah.
coming, and in terms of like percentage wise, how much percentage of all those white papers you read that you were like, okay, this is actually interesting, and this is just repetitive and just
Yeah.
there's no real
There
use
was
case?
no I feel like back then there wasn't that many repetitive use cases. Everything was pretty innovative. There was like, a new Uber, right? Like one that was based in Malaysia. I remember there was new lending protocols, new banks. There wasn't that many like repetitive white papers that I personally remember. And it started out that you could actually keep up with every white paper that was coming up. But
Mm.
then at late 2017, it just exploded. And, you would have tens of hundreds of new white papers a day coming up. Um,
So people start to really get, I guess, the
yeah,
FOMO effect as well, but everyone wants
yeah.
to
And,
start something.
you would first find out about them from like Telegram groups, but then there was new websites that came up that started putting them on there so you could
Mm.
read them and learn more about the unlock periods. For me, particularly, even during college, I was interested in fundraising, decentralized fundraising, and equity crowdfunding. And when I found equity crowdfunding wasn't successful after the
What
Jobs
is
Act.
equity crowdfunding?
Um, so in the US, you can do like you can crowdfund, right? And for equity. So different companies were, instead of doing like a normal big funding round from venture investors, could then work with retail to raise money in a legal way. And the equity crowdfunding space was just starting in 2016 with the Jobs Act that passed. And then that was like really the first of like, small investments. And then whenever ICOs came, it's just the funding was taking off. So I
Mm,
was so confused. I was like, why is this regulated equity crowdfunding not growing? But why is ICOs raising this much money? So that's what else got me into it. Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
And so basically, again, like just to, what are the most important pivotal moments you had during your journey in crypto that led you to Joba Networks? And
Yeah, yeah. So then, as I was, getting through that ICO phase, the natural thing then you arrived on was working at a crypto exchange, because that seemed to be the most, um, place where you see all the action, right? After all these
part of the
ICOs
platform,
raise
and
money, they come and get listed at the exchange. You can
yeah.
see all the trading volume, deal with all the traders, deal with also retail volume and marketers who want to buy the token. So I joined the crypto exchange called Liquid Coin back then, um, and was part of their BD, then led their partnerships, then went into, I guess, leading the product marketing team. And then, I did some consulting, and then that's what kind of has now led me to Joba. Um, but I always tell people, like, it was really hard back then to do any partnerships with financial institutions since they hated us. And sitting from Japan, we were very much trying to push for, saying that, Japan as a regulated exchanges were more legitimate as financial institutions work with us. So we actually paved a lot of the way for Japan and Singapore to start working with financial
Mm,
institutions because we were the very little regulated players
why
back
did
then.
they hate? Like,
They didn't
financial,
know they didn't know what to think of us, right?
they're scared, like
Everyone's
feeling
scared.
threatened.
2017, 2018, 2019, Bitcoin cryptocurrency is seen as just for money laundering and, terrorist groups and lots of bad actors, right? They didn't see the potential back then uh, of, this, currency. So, like there wasn't any new financial products that seemed legitimate they could trust, just looked like volatile currency
Mm.
to them. Yeah.
It must be, I mean, very challenging to put your, all your work, hard work into something that the majority of people are clearly saying this is bad
Hmm,
stuff. Like,
hmm, hmm.
what drove you to not give up in that sense? Because I feel
Yeah.
like you probably started with a lot of people around you, and a lot of people got out of the industry because they were like, well, financial institutions don't believe in it. They hate it. They
Yeah.
hate us.
Yeah.
What kept you going?
Um, I mean, I think still the utopia view of potential decentralization is probably what kept me going, and then also seeing firsthand, um, firsthand seeing the financial inclusion that could occur using cryptocurrency or blockchain technology is what kept driving me forward. Because as you're working at the exchange, started to see all these people onboarding from Indonesia, Vietnam, and seeing what that actually helps them be able
Mm,
to do. I think seeing those firsthand users experience, I think that was inspiring, and that kind of kept me going. Knowing that it, is still helping people that are not banked, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
What is maybe a moment that you remember as like, okay, that really helped me to be even more inspired and keep going, like a specific moment?
Mm, a specific moment.
Mm,
I think that the Telegram ICO was also pretty interesting because of one, like how much money was raised and then having the SEC go after them. Just because I really saw Telegram's potential as being this like decentralized messenger, and yet then the government wanted to shut them down. So seeing that kind of war going on of these really, decentralized focused players having to deal with government entities and fight them, I
mm,
suppose. I think those were moments that, continue to inspire me that if they care, they're obviously see it as a threat. So, you should probably keep building on something that is
yeah,
posed
it
to,
confirms
it confirms
the
that,
utopia you see
yeah,
as well.
yeah,
That makes sense.
yeah.
Um, and I guess that leads us to you founding your current company,
Hmm.
Joba Networks. What is
Hmm.
Joba Networks all about?
Yeah, so I mean, Joba is all about having a borderless identity infrastructure for the future. So the first iteration, I think, of blockchain wallets, cryptocurrency is very much about money, right? And having your wallet with just money inside of it. And I believe the next future is your wallet with ID verifications, credentials. So, I always tell people when you go to the club, what are you carrying? You have your wallet with your ID and cash, right? And crypto today just carries your cash,
Mm,
but the next wave is really going to be about carrying your identity with you and being able to use, your identity um, across different applications that you own. And currently, you're really the product in all these Web2 applications, right? Even like LinkedIn makes all their money from simply all of our professional data, right? So with LinkedIn holding all of our professional data today, they're able to become this monolith monopoly company and be able to charge us huge economic rents by being part of it for recruiters, for anybody who wants to search and find anyone online. The data is all owned by LinkedIn. So what we're really trying to do is offer a new solution that decentralizes this process and part of this new iteration of a user-owned identity network. Yeah,
makes sense.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm a huge user of LinkedIn,
Mm,
but I also see the issues when they could tomorrow change the price,
mm-hmm,
and we will just not say anything and we'll just accept it because
mm-hmm.
it is the only platform out there for us as a
Yeah,
recruiter.
yeah,
Like, why do you feel like as a user, as a job seeker, because those are the people that you're trying to onboard, I
yeah,
guess,
yeah.
why should they care? Because I feel like a lot of times, same with social
So this
media,
is
right? Like people know they are the product, but they don't really care
Yeah, yeah.
much.
I think for so my personal story, if you guys Google me, was about how, or one of my personal stories which catalyzed me is how the liquid exchange got hacked and I was scapegoated for the hacked as one of the people part of it, supposedly, right? And the biggest risk, right, as you as a user being on LinkedIn is that you're giving all of your information publicly about who you work with, right? And I believe this poses a huge problem for companies of the future. In a world where you have like AI agents and you have deep fakes acting like certain individuals, you can easily impersonate someone, ask someone to make a bank transfer, ask someone to do something internally for a company. And this is leading to huge company hacks, Twitter hacks. Hacks are becoming just a regular thing and scams are continuing to thrive because
Mm.
the relationships are visible in public. And this belief is a huge issue for big companies that are managing our data and for your own privacy. Yeah.
Do you think with that in mind, then that every social media platform will face at some point the
It's
same
already
kind of
happening.
issues?
It's
Yeah.
already happening. Like, every week, I would say there's a new X account takeover that's happening, right? And that's a huge issue because then their X account that has a huge following is then posting phishing links that then people to have their accounts get hacked further or money stolen. So that's a issue for individuals. But for companies, this poses a huge problem for any employees that are working that if they click on a link, these people will stay inside specifically North Korean hackers in particular will stay inside your company system for months before
Mm.
they make an attack. And this is not just an issue for crypto companies, but any data company that is holding our information. So it calls for a new need for privacy. And you as an individual do not want to keep providing professional data to help them find those company or relationships. Yeah.
Yeah. For me, even as a recruiter these days, I have more and more often like fake profiles out there that
Yeah.
I'm kind
Yeah.
of talking to someone, and then we have like a meeting literally,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I can see it's not even a real person. They just go through a script. It answers
Oh,
questions pretty well.
wow. That's scary.
It's pretty scary. It's
Yeah.
pretty scary, and
You should probably not be downloading their resumes. If you are,
oh,
your laptop might already have some fishes on it. Yeah.
okay, let's not think about that
Yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah,
But yeah, it happens more and more often. I see it happening.
yeah.
How
And
about verification then? Like, because a lot of companies are like LinkedIn as well. I saw like they're pushing more and more to do the verification.
yeah,
Is that not a temporary solution?
I think it's a, a solution to get there, but it's going to be not enough. Beyond just like the identity verification to prove that that account is owned by a verified person or has a physical ID, people can still
Mm,
buy IDs on the internet and verify an account, right? So that's not really the best way. We believe that there's three ways to completely verify a person. We think it's going to be biometric, right? So
right.
things like WorldCoin with your eyes. We believe it's like Web 2 ways, which is like passports, what countries issue. It's going to be what, any kind of identity information coming from governments or maybe other platforms who already did some kind of KYC verification. And then kind of the Web 3 way is going to be a lot of social attestations and also, things that you accomplish on blockchains and protocols. So we believe that to have full verification of an identity reputation, we need these three things: biometric, Web 2 traditional methods, and Web 3 methods.
The
And you have to aggregate all this to
mm,
create the correct identity.
that makes sense. The third method you mentioned, like
Mm,
stuff that you accomplish on the blockchain.
yeah.
Can you elaborate
Yeah,
on
I
that?
think which is it's very common amongst the Web3 group, but a lot of people participating in governance, participating in grants, participating in completing tasks that are bounties, etc. Those are some of like the Web3 things that are going on already on the blockchain level. So what we're also trying to bring is these decentralized job posts, right, to these protocols, so that you have decentralized job posts that people can also complete that lead to, building reputation on
Mm.
chain. Yeah.
Decentralized job post. Like,
Mm.
can you again? Can you elaborate on that? Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Basically, our plan is to have kind of a smart contract designed job posts. Like today, you have a lot of fake job posts going out there, right? And these fake job posts are being coming from fake recruiters, coming from fake companies. People are just kind of testing out what kind of candidates they can get. Lots of ghost jobs are out there. So we believe that having more a smart contract based job post will lead to um, more realness
yeah,
and real applicants as well. You could sift through. Um, so that's one innovation that we have
that
planned.
makes sense. And again, I worked for big agencies, and this is exactly
And
what we
also
do.
tracking
Like,
like referrals, tracking applicants, in a much more transparent, private way,
yeah.
right? That's accurate. That's also, what we believe is the way to kind of help build a network of trust
Yeah.
and for both applicants, and also the companies posting them. So,
No, that makes
yeah.
sense. The fake jobs is a huge thing. Like putting those jobs out there just to collect new candidates all the time, even though the job is not real. You just want to be able to propose
Yeah.
if you have a certain job.
Yeah.
But it's huge. Like
Yeah.
it's
And candidates, right? And people that are looking for work online have a hard time knowing what's really true out there. And there's a lot of them who don't hear back, don't know
mm,
if this is actually going through a process. So creating some incentives that are aligned with both candidates and companies in this that we can put on a smart contract is something we think is important.
mm,
Um, yeah.
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 You mentioned so you've been through that. This phase where your company got hacked, like the exchange got
Mm.
hacked. That led you to want to start
Yeah,
Joba
I'll share
Networks.
more I
Yeah.
mean, the hack was then speculated to be due to LinkedIn, and if you search just like hacks LinkedIn, then you'll find a lots of articles about this, but LinkedIn continues to be the number one like social engineering attack vector for companies. And I think not a lot of people are paying attention to the
Mm.
risk on LinkedIn.
I'm not sure I understand actually this
Yeah.
part. Can
Yeah,
you?
yeah. It's like, so if you're on LinkedIn, I say I'm the head of product. This person says they're the head of operations. Someone by having that information public, say some hacker views those relationships in the organization, they're able to put together an org chart to say, okay, this is, who works for who, this is the order of protocol. And then they're able to impersonate, act like somebody make a request as that person, whether it's via email, via messaging, whatever method, to make a request. And often, that then will allow someone to push a link. They push to the link, then you've already been.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
by constantly pushing all your employees to be on LinkedIn, you're actually creating a huge danger for
Yes,
yourself out there.
exactly. Because then the companies know who's the CEO, who's the
Yeah.
CFO, who is the finance manager, right?
Yeah.
You're constantly putting at risk who's involved, and that shows the inner workings of how the company operates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And because of the hierarchy of how things work, you're really quickly going to answer
Yeah.
to XYZ
Yeah.
because of the title.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't think about it that way.
So that's why we believe user-owned, privacy-preserving,
Yeah.
decentralized LinkedIn makes sense now, because this is huge risk for personal reputation of individuals who are working. There's huge issues with the hiring process. With the easy apply button, you get also tons of unqualified applicants. So we believe the future is credential based, and to solve a lot of these problems.
Yeah.
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 When you talk with, engineers out there, with job applicants in general, how aware are they of those issues that we just discussed about? Like,
I mean, I think most people are not super aware. Everyone says it's so hard to get a job. I just apply, never hear back. That's probably the number one
yeah,
thing we hear, right?
yeah,
And probably the number two thing, we hear is, oh, it's all just referral based. I need to figure out how to get a referral. And, the current way that LinkedIn works and all that is still very difficult to find out. Okay, if I want to go find somebody who works at that company, who in my network can I find in that company? So we want to make those kinds of things easier. And then also for the hire who's exhausted from
mm,
dealing with thousands of applicants, we want to also show the ones with the best credentials, or even gate the way that people can apply so that you don't get so
yeah,
many candidates. Yeah.
yeah. Did you ever speak with people at LinkedIn
Uh,
to improve the product? Because maybe there's
yeah,
a
yeah.
middle way, right?
Yeah,
Like in
yeah.
the end, like,
Yeah. Not yet, but we're happy to. Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
sure, yeah.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. There's been a few people who've offered to connect us to people, but we haven't talked to them yet. Yeah.
Because if everyone works towards the same problem, which is an obvious one, like,
Mm.
might be easier and
Yeah, yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
Interesting. Like, what's the current situation like? So for someone out there who, let's go a little bit back as well in terms of, like, if I'm, so for example, I'm an engineer, I'm a job seeker, I can't find really success on LinkedIn to find a job. What will my experience be on Joba Networks? Like, why will it be better? Like,
Mm.
directly me, as because that's the people we're trying to attract in the first
Yeah,
place,
yeah.
right? Mm.
I think that the number one thing is we have, as you plugging in your identity and credentials of who you are, the idea is that you would only be suggested and view what jobs you're actually applicable for. Like, instead of having to see tons of irrelevant jobs that you don't qualify for, you're
Yeah.
only viewing the ones that you're qualified for if you have your identity stored on chain as like a key in Joba. So that's one thing that we're trying to do. Um, and, the other parts of it is, as a freelancer, contractor, you're dealing with tons of fees, right? When you're on Upwork, Fiverr, etc., the fees. And then having your account on all these different marketplaces also makes it harder for you to get a job, because you might have one job here, one job there,
Mm.
and these are not unified. So we want you to bring all of your data from the different sources so that you can create a unified identity of the different marketplaces, so
Mm.
that you don't have to, almost as a replacement to your portfolio.
Yeah.
Yeah. And by having all of those experiences in one place that you own and you can share what you want,
Yeah.
that might help you get jobs faster. Yeah.
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 Yeah. There's not much more need for recruiters probably at this point then.
Oh.
Okay. A bit of a chill here. But yeah,
No,
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 I
no.
can see it if everything is centralized and, like you say, a person has done that many kind of tasks outside, and you can start seeing, okay, that's the track record of a person,
Yeah.
the recognition they got for it. It becomes so much easier
Mm-hmm,
to
mm-hmm.
match them with the right
Yeah,
opportunity
yeah.
out there.
I mean, there'll still be a place, I think, for recruiters to still make introductions, right?
Mm,
Definitely. I think just the roles might change a little bit,
yeah,
right? But I also, and already there's a lot of AI recruiters out there that are already disrupting this, right? Like there's a
absolutely.
lot of AI agent recruiters I see coming up to
Yeah.
kind of make that process faster too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I left my agency maybe 10 months ago now, almost a year ago, and with the same belief that, okay, things are changing completely. Like, you
Mm,
cannot just anymore be paid because you're scrolling on LinkedIn, finding the right profile. This is over. Like, I see how powerful LinkedIn gets.
mm-hmm.
The tool when it comes to sourcing the right candidates is so powerful. Like, it's really, really
Yeah.
good.
And
But,
and and one other
mm,
thing I'll highlight, what we're trying to focus on at Joba is, after COVID happened, more people are hiring overseas rather
mm,
than in their own market. A lot of people are hiring into like lower cost regions. Funding is lower for a lot of companies these days, trying to cost save.
mm,
So, verifying that talent overseas is
yeah,
something that we really want to specialize on because these guys are not necessarily the top results when they come up on LinkedIn,
true.
right? So we're trying to actually make those guys also more visible
Yeah.
if they have good
And it's also
experience.
not the first talent that I guess companies here in Japan will consider,
Yeah.
regardless of us presenting as a recruiter presenting that resume. As soon as we say this person is overseas, because of all the immigration challenges that comes with
Yeah.
it, they're like,
Yeah. So that's another thing that we want to kind of eventually get into with our borderless credit narrative is, like you said, having all the verification of the experiences, professional experience. We could then, say to the government, okay, we have all this information that's verified to then
borderless
get,
credit.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
to get into, applying for a visa to kind of help that process go faster,
Yeah,
right? Because a lot of what they're trying to do is verify all the data points of who the
yeah,
person is before. So,
yeah. I mean, I guess it always comes down to having that centralized point of data
yeah,
where you can
in this
show what kind
case,
of person you are.
yeah, and then in this case, the centralized point of data is you.
Yeah,
You own it, right? You're not putting it on all these places and
yeah,
storing it. You're storing it in your wallet. Yeah.
yeah. Which to these days, I guess it will be your resume
Yeah.
and your
Yeah.
LinkedIn profile,
Yeah.
and which is very
Yeah.
easily copied and yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
interesting.
But bringing it with more, privacy and um
Yeah,
immutability. Yeah.
yeah. We had someone coming over a few episodes ago talking about, I guess, a similar way of collecting data and centralized point for your medical records,
Yeah. Yeah.
basically,
Yeah.
right? Where
Yeah.
everything is kind of solved at that point. If you own all
Own
your
the
data, it's
exactly.
all centralized. You feel kind of safe to go to any country then because you're like,
Yeah.
okay, here it is. Here's
Yeah.
who I am from.
Exactly. That's
Mm,
I would say it's similar problem case, right?
yeah, you.
And that's really I think going to
Mm,
be the future is all this identity there'll be all these different identity wallets
mm,
and people will store their information on these identity wallets. You already see EU is rolling out identity wallets in 2026. So 500 million EU citizens are going to have identity wallets by 2026. That's less than 2 years away. So this is going to come very soon, whether it's medical data, professional data. Yeah.
what are the current situation? Like, what are the, I guess, the bottlenecks right now? Like, where do things get slowed down? Is it just regulation in general? Is it people simply don't care? Like, where do you
Yeah.
see
I
like a
mean,
big improvement
uh,
possibility?
it's gonna be it's gonna be these people like us who want to bring on users. That's one. And then it's gonna be about, how many large scale partnerships can we get that are gonna also accept our identity data.
Mm,
That's really, I think, and the speed at which you can do that
yeah,
um, is going to be what's important.
but is the current like those? I guess the biggest platforms right now, the ones with the most power,
Hmm.
they kind of lose all their power once they lose the ownership of the data.
Yeah. And
So is that the
once
issue that you're facing basically is like getting partnerships that are actually will not suffer by giving up on the data ownership?
um not necessarily,
Mm,
um because today the partners that we would want to have would find our data helpful, right? Say that, it's so like one area we want to move towards is like these DeFi loans, right? Today, all DeFi loans are over collateralized. We want to be able to offer like uncollateralized loans.
can you explain over collateralized?
Yeah, yeah, like a over collateralized loan, meaning today all loans in the DeFi world are designed as like 2 Bitcoin, it's like 2 to 1. I need to offer 2 Bitcoins to get a 1 Bitcoin line of credit, for example. So it's about, putting in more funds. But this is really only designed for people who have a lot of crypto assets.
Hmm.
But if we could also enable loans or credit for people who are just, working, say they need just like an extra $100 for a month or something,
Yeah.
right? That unlocks a whole nother group of
Why is it
people.
like that right now? That the ratio is 2 to 1? Like,
Because people haven't found ways to assess the identities of who is borrowing. What is their credit worthiness, right? And people don't know what the credit worthiness is in an individual besides what assets they can offer. So
lack of
we
trust,
lack
basically.
of trust. And if we can bring in more indicators as to who that identity is, then that can also create a new way to assess someone's credit worthiness. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Which comes, I guess, from mass adoption and people using it more and more
Yeah,
and having
yeah.
more data.
And and sharing who they are. Like, okay, maybe I have a job at Coinbase, have a job here. We can kind of estimate what their income might be based on their wallet activity, and then be able to create a new credit score to borrow
Mm,
money without putting up so much cash.
yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Who will be the biggest
And
beneficials, like, from this technology? Like, what
yeah,
would you say?
yeah. I think the biggest benefiters immediately are people in emerging markets where currencies are very volatile, where financial systems are broken, where financial markets might be manipulated. This is where, it's like, I can name some regions, right? Like, places like Russia, a place like Nigeria, Turkish lira,
Mm,
Argentine pesos, really places with this, financial systems that have completely broke over
yeah,
the past years. These are the immediate beneficiaries.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been traveling around for maybe now 10 years. So I lived in Canada, Australia, Japan now, and I meet so many people from different countries. And the stories that I hear, like, I'm in the Eurozone, I'm from Belgium. So it sounds crazy, but like the more I talk to people, it's like, wow, people, their life changes overnight, right? Inflation hits or whatever, like the currency crashes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, stable coins have now product market fit, as they say, because they process more transactions than Visa. I think double the amount
Really?
of transactions in Visa this past quarter. So stable coins clearly are achieving huge product market fit in these regions, right? A stable dollar um, is able to provide freedom and safety to
Mm,
these people. So, and also on Joba, you can also earn on stable coins. So that also provides a economic and financial freedom path by
yeah.
earning in stables and USD, as opposed to having to invest in stable coins, right? If you're sitting in, Lira and then converting to USD, that's more of an investment and holding strategy versus if you're earning as your job and from a global company in US dollars,
Yeah.
you don't have to necessarily invest first to get into the economy, right?
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Because that's also the barrier to entry, right? A lot of people don't necessarily have
Money to put in.
money to put in,
Yeah.
and so now
S-
you're putting
When
those
you
people right
earn,
into
yeah,
the
earn in
system.
dollars, and then, you can then take part in any DeFi to maybe earn some more yield. So then
Yeah,
you start accumulating wealth, right? So this is why I
yeah,
think a lot of people want to be part of this new economy.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because now what happens is often people, like, I've been actively investing since many years, and I really care about it. But it's hard for me to talk to people that actually care about it. Often people don't care.
Mm,
And I think what happens often is they work very hard, they get their money, they stash some in the bank, and
mm,
they just leave it there, and they feel like it's extra work to
mm,
have to invest it. It's extra, thinking power to put behind it. And
mm.
but with that, you guys are solving that issue. You're kind of
Making it
right
easier.
into,
Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
once it's, that I guess if you earn it directly to your wallet, then what are you going to do? Are you going to, spend some of it right away? Or are you going to
exactly,
put
yeah.
it in a vault right away to start earning some yield? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Just, yeah, again, like it's less friction, right, for people, and
Mm-hmm.
allows. And again, I feel like then people start caring a little bit more,
Mm,
because when it comes to, Web3, like, we spoke a little bit about it off camera, but like it has this kind of negative
mm.
image often. And uh, what do you think will allow at some point to get everyone, at the same in the same spot as you are, like, or like people who actually, you know, see the value of it, like who says like, yeah, it's obviously the
Yeah.
future, we need to get there. Like, what kind of pivotal moment do you think we need to get?
Mm, I mean, one, people need to stop saying Web3, I think, and it just needs to be hidden in all the apps that we use for people to finally start using it. I think it doesn't necessarily have to be this niche topic that only certain people know about. I think that's one to kind of
Like changing the name basically,
changing
like
the name, yeah, and it just
how would you call it?
just just new money, right? You know, whatever it is, it's just uh start using some of the apps that enable this. And you know, it really depends on who you are, what your background is, and what it means to you, right? Like I said, if you're coming from somebody who has volatile currencies, this solves a real problem and you're actual users of it. Meanwhile, if you're somebody coming from a more, have a traditional job, have disposable income, you are going to just speculate and have fun with meme coins, and that's what Web3 means to you, right? So it depends on like where you come from and what you're looking for, and I
Mm,
think there's a place for all types. Um, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like I said, like I
And not
feel,
not everyone has to care about what it's doing, right? Some people can just trade meme coins and try to
yeah.
like gamble, right? That's a huge subset of the population
I
right now.
guess, yeah, caring is the wrong word, but more like the awareness, like understanding the potential of if
Mm,
this becomes like mass
yeah,
adoption,
yeah. I
what
think,
happens? Like,
yeah. Um, how to increase the awareness of the possibilities. Yeah, I mean, we're gonna have to see more companies like Binance, Coinbase,
you know,
right? The next generation of real companies need to emerge, because everything that drove up all of our first wave is really centralized exchanges.
mm,
So really, it's about what is going to be the next mainstream product that everyone uses. Um, and it kind of comes in waves, right? You have centralized exchanges, we had NFTs, now we have meme coins, but what is the next thing that's going to be truly useful? I think it's identity. That's why we're moving in that direction. And I think marketplaces, powered by stable coins is much more low
mm,
cost. So
yeah.
yeah.
What's the biggest challenge you're facing right now with growing Joba in general? Would you say, like,
Yeah.
because it sounds really hard what you're doing,
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah, yeah. I think definitely growing mind share around it, and the approach, um,
growing what? Sorry,
growing mind share
mindshare.
and the approach of like what
What's
it is.
mindshare?
Mind share, like growing the amount of people who believe in it and
Okay.
want to invest in this space, right? Who want to try to use the technology in this way, right? Because investors are very focused on their returns, focused on, immediate returns is what they've been very used to in the crypto ecosystem. But, finding some more long term investors
Mm,
who want to build more sustainably, I think that's what we probably need the most amount in this space right now, because most investors are very scared after what's happened. Yeah.
mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
And, the and the ability to, like I said, making it not a Web3 project, but making this, okay, this is a helping people earn stable coins. This solves a real problem, focusing more on the what matters
Mm,
and being able to share that rather than just being, this is a Web3 project.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is why I even when I told you the way I wanted to take this conversation was more about, okay, why should people actually
Mm-hmm.
care? Because I feel
Mm-hmm.
like that's everything starts there. Like
Yeah, yeah.
otherwise
Yeah.
we,
So I think the top reasons, right, is like one, what we discussed about like LinkedIn being a high risk for both companies and individuals continuing to provide their data out there for free, publicly in particular, right? That's like one reason why I think people should care about this. Two, I think if you're someone who is a freelancer, contractor, anyone who works on the internet, you want to own that history, because the old ways of working is very much like, one country, one company, one retirement, entity.
yeah.
But already people are working for themselves, working in multiple countries, and they don't know which country they're going to belong to for retirement, right? So In order to build for that second future that I described,
Yeah.
I think the first step is having proof of work and proof of experience and identity data stored in a private network, um, so that later on we can assess. Yeah, this is the kind of discussions I'm having with friends about people owning multiple passports and multiple residencies these days. Like, where do you see yourself? Like, do you
Mm,
see the government's going to help you or not? And where do you see yourself, retiring? What are you gonna do for funding, right? Um,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Because even for me, my career has been scattered around like three different places, and every
Yeah.
time I arrived in a new country, I had to
Start
kind of,
over.
people don't really trust you when you say I did this, because you did it in a country where they have no clue about.
Yeah.
But if you had this everything centralized and kind of being able to present that avatar of your history kind of things, like,
Mhm.
hey, this is, I leveled up there, I did this. But yeah, and same. I mean, I'm pretty sure I will stay in Japan, but I'm not sure. But I'm
Mhm.
also sometimes like, man, how do I convince people of what I achieved in Japan? If I ever move to another country, I feel like
Exactly.
I have to rebuild everything.
Yeah.
Like those soft skills that you cannot really share on a resume. It's like,
And
yeah,
and and followers is also not a good indicator, right?
no,
So,
exactly.
like, people right now are doing social reputation via followers,
Mm,
and I think the next step is beyond just the followers is gonna be how reputable
yeah,
are the followers that you have, or how reputable are the relationships that you have?
absolutely.
And to display that, like, we want to try to do that on chain
No,
with
absolutely.
vouching for people. And
Yeah,
yeah,
no, yeah, I love it. Yeah, and it's,
just
yeah,
like even LinkedIn did endorsing skills, right?
yeah.
But then everyone just endorses all their friends, right?
It's
It's
so
not,
meaningless.
it's
No,
meaningless. So
yeah,
that's why we want to put some incentives like on chain
yeah.
to make people endorse for skills and see how
Yeah.
reputable are the
It's
people
just a
that also.
super node kind of thing, right? Where like, yeah, yeah, and I have like what now, 13 or 14,000 followers on LinkedIn, and it means nothing because every week I reach the maximum of connection requests, and people are, oh, but you're LinkedIn. I'm like, no, man, like I just max out every time the LinkedIn connections, and it just gives that false like perception to people, right?
Hmm.
So yeah, but like, yeah, being able to see, oh, that person got vouched by X amount of people on that, like you say, the endorsement on LinkedIn. But when people endorse me now on LinkedIn, it's like, oh, now I have to do it as well.
Hmm.
Otherwise, it feels rude,
Hmm.
and so it just already breaks, right? It
Yeah.
doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah. Um. Yeah.
What will happen to LinkedIn's business model if they don't own the data anymore?
Well, um, what will happen to their business model if they don't own it anymore? I mean, I think they're gonna have to find new modes of revenue, and, right now, a lot of it is focused on just ad revenue, right?
Hmm.
So, if they have all these users, maybe they'll focus more there. If the profiles, it's hard to say. Yeah.
Mm, I have no clue. Like, what's this breaking down into, like the revenue for LinkedIn, where it's like I feel like recruitment is they
Probably
make
huge. Yeah, it's
profits
huge. Yeah.
very huge, and then again, if they don't own that data, it's like boom, that's gone.
Mhm.
So I
Mhm.
see like this is the biggest challenge as well. It's like
Mm.
fighting that behemoth or like,
Mm.
uh,
Yeah. I mean, it's a huge market, and there's definitely different like competitors emerging too,
yeah,
right? Who people want to people want to break LinkedIn. A lot of people don't like LinkedIn. So,
yeah. I think especially freelancers and like you know,
and it's
pe-
not designed for this like future of work that we're living in today either. It's not
mm,
designed for people who um I think have worked globally, or people who even do contracts, or people
yeah,
who do seminars for work,
like
people that
right
are
now.
experts, right?
Mm,
Like any type of fractional work or these new consultants that emerge post COVID,
mm,
freelance, it's LinkedIn is not a place for them. LinkedIn's very designed for corporate, right?
who's the ideal user right now for a Joba? Like,
Right now, ideal users are those emerging market talents, who usually are freelance.
hmm,
That's currently our target, and those are the ideal users today. Um, but we want to progress more into then overall broader freelance contract,
yeah,
and then broader into really people who own multiple citizenships. And
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, like again, I think it's the future. Like people will be more and more freelancers and
And
like
cost of, like, cost of flights keeps going down too, and people are so much more mobile. All the countries are giving out digital nomad visas,
yeah.
right? So,
Yeah, I'm not sure
um
about the cost of flights. Like I checked the tickets the other day from
oh.
to go back to Belgium. Like might check again, but it didn't
Yeah,
look really
yeah.
good.
Yeah, but things are getting, people are much more mobile than they ever were before, so we need,
Yeah.
like, new infrastructure for that.
Yeah, and also like I feel like it's less and less cool to say, "Hey, I stayed 5 years in this company," and like I personally, at least, maybe I'm biased here, but I feel more excited about people who change companies every 2 years or every year
Mm,
almost. That I'm
mm,
like, "Oh wow, this guy is able to change, or this lady is able to change so quickly and adapt to a new environment." I
mm,
feel like that's way more valuable these days.
the ability
Uh,
to adapt and
yeah.
learn new things, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly. And I feel like that's where, like, especially with AI, with tech in general, where it moves so fast, where if you stay in the same place for too long, you probably are not going to be better off. Like,
Yeah,
you will
yeah,
struggle.
yeah. Unless you're, like, getting promoted every few
But you're
years, right?
still surrounded by people who think the same way, who look
Mm,
at the tools the same way. So
mm,
even then, even you get promoted, and it might give you that false sense of growth as well.
mm.
Like, I mean, again, I'm
Yeah,
changing
yeah.
company every time, and now I do my own thing. So uh, I never stayed longer than 2 years and a half in the company. That's the longest. All the rest
Okay,
was like a year. So yeah, I'm probably biased on this one.
okay.
What's your vision for the future when it comes to Web3 and
Yeah. Um, I mean, my vision for the future is very much uh kind of around these, like, private network states emerging, which you already see. Um, I think it's gonna be really like, in the more traditional space, it might be like, China, EU, Russia,
mm,
everyone else right now. But I kind of, and then in the blockchain space, I kind of see different protocols taking over different regions and different markets. And that's where the real economic value is going to be captured, is being part of, like, one of these ecosystems or multiple ecosystems. Um, and then, I think every app that we use is going to be, you know, hopefully it's going to be user owned and have much more privacy on the identity data. Just because, as I mentioned, 2026 with the EU, I think there's going to be, much more regulation around identity privacy
mm,
coming. So I think a lot of apps that we use will be gated with what we can do based on who we are, where we live. Yeah. I
mm,
think it'll still be a open internet, but or open experience, but I think it'll be a much more customized as
yeah.
well. Yeah.
Yeah, and it might also help, like, even when it comes to like how you express yourself on the internet. To if like one thing that I love about LinkedIn is people know that there's repercussion if they go crazy.
Mm,
If they say stuff or they post stuff that's like really bad, they know there's repercussion. Like it's your name, it's your company. And I feel like if again you have that centralized identity and like we might get like a bit of a cleaner kind of aspect of the internet, so to
mhm,
speak.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, I
Uh,
mean, definitely cleaner because today it's just about, like, impressions, and the algorithms are kind of designed more for scale.
mm,
But, I'm kind of hoping that this will make it a little bit less intense because people are getting exhausted, right,
yeah.
from all the different tools and saying there's so much irrelevant information that
Yeah.
I'm in consuming. So,
Yeah, I mean, I'm not on social media myself, so LinkedIn is the only one actually that
okay.
it's my tool for work. But the rest, I don't want to touch it. It just makes me tired. Like
Mhm,
it's
mhm,
you. I wanted to touch also one point because a lot of founders out there they do struggle with raising money for their companies. It's not easy, right? Like
mhm,
um you've been raising money for your company. Like again, in the space that you're operating, it must not be the easiest one. Like, what did you
mhm.
learn so far from the experience, and what kind of advice would you give to people trying to raise money in general?
Yeah. I think, at first when I was approaching fundraising, I was just kind of like tapping on different shoulders of people that I knew. Um, not in a very strategic way.
Mhm.
So that was one thing that, I think that I regret doing. So what I would recommend is having a strategy when coming to the fundraising. First, like, step back, really think about your problem statement, your solution. First, of course, your pitch deck, because that's going to be the first impression you send to investors. Um, and very much being very thoughtful and curated about your approach to the investors. When you make your strategy, create your list, right? And find the right point of contact, find if you have any mutual connections with them, um, and be able to write custom messages, I believe is like pretty important. Um, in really helping them understand what is the big broad vision, because investors want to invest in the next, billion-dollar
Mhm.
companies, right? So you have to have a very broad big vision, but
How
then
how
make
do you
it
give a broad
digestible.
yeah, sorry. How do you
Yeah.
give a broad vision, but also still show that you're special in what you're doing, right? Because I feel like
Mhm.
that's very, very, very hard, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah. Um Yeah, I think that you need to show that the future that you're building is like inevitable. It's going to happen, and this, like I believe that future of identity is going to be like this. I believe future work is going to be like this.
mhm,
So being able to demonstrate one this and then kind of the step by step go to market on how you're going to get there. As I mentioned, our first step is just like Web3, emerging markets, freelance, but then, hitting much more broader solution population and going after the entire LinkedIn, which is 1 billion users. Um, kind of like that path of what it looks like,
mm,
I think is also important. So, one thing I just came out of the Draper program they mentioned is like the team and exit strategy. It's very important. So, like, is your team also capable of achieving a potential exit for the investor too?
how do you do that as a like, people who never really done that before? Like, I mean, you have experience, right? So people, I feel like people could probably believe in what you do because you've seen you're in the
Mm,
space. But
mm,
let's say half of your team is not that experienced because it's
mm,
it's not hard to, like, you
mm,
need a lot of capital already to build up like a superstar team, so to speak, right?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's really, a combination of, like, luck and convincing too,
Hmm.
right? Of being able to attract the right people to your team. I think that's really what is
You must be
also
probably
important.
good at
And
handling
it's not some
rejection, right?
What?
Rejection is probably like you got to be very good at handling it, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think that, just realizing, like, there's always gonna like, not everyone is gonna like you, right? You can't take things personally, so just take the no and move on.
Mm,
Yeah.
but I like what you said about like it's inevitable, like it's with or without you, this is
Yeah,
happening.
with or without you, this is happening. This is the future that's occurring,
Yeah,
and we know it, you know? Yeah,
yeah, yeah, that's powerful.
yeah,
I like that. I like that
yeah.
a lot. And so, and how do you know whether an investor is good or not for you to be backed by? Because if you're really really good at saying, hey, it's with or without you, now suddenly everyone is in, right? And like, how do you evaluate the right partner, so to speak?
Yeah, I think just ones that also have the, long term at mind. What other companies have they invested into? How did they help their other companies in the past? Maybe talking to some of their other portfolio companies. That's one thing I'm trying to work on now is, when I see a potential investor, seeing who the portfolio companies are, maybe reaching out to some of those founders too to see how helpful they were.
Mm.
Yeah.
Is the approach to first try to attract as many and then you do your homework on them, or is it the opposite?
No,
You do the
opposite.
homework. You do the
You have to
homework
do the
first.
homework up front. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. You have to do the homework up front before
Yeah,
you
I will
approach.
definitely do the opposite. That's why I'm asking.
Oh,
Like,
really?
when we started InnoHyve, I don't know. I was like, I wanted to pitch it and try to raise money. I didn't even need money, but I was like, kind of want to do it. Sounds cool. Sounds like a good thing to learn about.
Yeah.
I pissed a few people off because they were like, man, you have nothing to pitch. Like, step away.
Yeah, yeah.
But I did the approach of like trying to talk to every VC out there, everyone. And so you will
Yeah.
do the opposite.
I
Study the
think you
person
need
first, and
yes, I
that makes
think you
sense.
have to study it before you approach. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Again, I didn't know what I was doing.
No,
Actually,
exactly. I learned in the process too. Yeah.
yeah, because I feel like a lot of people will do what I did in that sense. Like you
Mm.
just shoot everywhere, and then you're like, oh, someone said yes, let's take a look. But if
Yeah.
that person is the wrong
But
person,
that's what I mean.
yeah,
Approach study first and like have a customized message for everyone.
Mm,
It's the tough work that actually pays off in the
yeah,
long run, you know?
yeah.
Yeah. No
Uh,
shortcuts is what I tell people all the time.
yeah,
Like in the beginning, it's a lot of the hard work that will take you further.
yeah. You definitely have like a long-term vision as well for what you're doing. Like you know it's gonna be how if you had to
And
guess. Mm,
that's the only like and everyone is different on their motivation, right? But for me, like to see that that's what I'm building towards
yeah,
kind of at least gives me a north star. So every decision that we make, is this helping us get there? No.
yeah,
Yes or no, right?
yeah. Your vision is really like very strong and like what are the motivations beside achieving the vision? Like because again, I feel like being a
Yeah.
founder, it's hard already, right? All this stuff is hard, but what you try to do is really, really hard.
Yeah.
Like what
Uh
will be the sense of achievement? Like what does it look like once you
yeah.
say, okay, yes, I did it. It happened.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just like number of people that we can help that got paid. It'll be amount of money that's been processed through the platform. Um, just to show that, we connected, made some kind of impact.
Mm.
Um, that'll probably be the determinants of
Yeah,
success.
there's a story behind those numbers, basically, right? You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
okay, yeah, it's not just revenue. It's just
Yeah.
like it's just a
Like
story
one
behind the numbers.
yeah, like one thing that I remember Brian Armstrong from Coinbase said, was he said Coinbase had, the number one thing that through his story so far, what made him feel like success was the number of people that became millionaires after the Coinbase IPO, right? So, changing that many people's lives to then become quote unquote millionaires
Mm.
was what really inspired him the most. And I think for me, it's also the same. It's like, how many people can you help achieve financial freedom or achieve their dreams, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that makes
Go
sense.
to school, get a job, get paid, have the mobility that you want.
Yeah, I guess
Being
just
in
fully get rewarded for your skills, who you are, what you do,
Yeah.
regardless of where you are and who you know, and like
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
really get to that, like just purely getting paid for your skills, I guess, and
Yeah, yeah,
achievements.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, because I think the, also future is moving more towards specialized work and skill-based work, right? Like,
Mm,
education's becoming a lot more irrelevant,
yeah,
and what kind of skill sets you have in the digital age, what
yeah.
skill, like, is gonna be
I
more
feel a little
important.
bit different when it comes to like being specialized to
Mm.
the point where I'm like, I feel like we're moving
Well,
towards,
being able to learn the new skills quickly too.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like I feel the definition of being an expert is changing really quickly. Like
Mm.
because I'm someone who didn't go through like education. I dropped out pretty early in my life, and
Mm.
but I'm learning very very fast about topics now,
Yeah.
and I feel like okay,
That's
what
more
does it mean to be
important
an
though.
expert at this point? Like
Mm.
how would you qualify someone like okay, you're an expert in what you do? Is
Yeah.
it the length of time you've done
Yeah, yeah.
like
It's hard to say. I agree that nowadays everyone is suddenly becoming an expert because it's
right?
so easy to say that online because no one's verifying it, right? No
Mm,
one's checking. But I still think like real experts are people who have dived in the topic at length
mm,
and probably study it over a certain period of time as well. Um, I kind of think a lot about professors these days too, like professors, researchers, they spend, years,
mm,
forming some kind of opinion on something by actually studying human behavior, studying something over the course of time.
mm,
I believe that those are real experts that are now starting to get, questioned because you have these new age people who say, I'm an expert on
yeah.
XYZ. So I still think those are the real OG experts of like certain
Interesting.
topics.
Yeah.
But uh and yeah, I mean anyone can become a quote unquote expert maybe by checking on ChatGPT and reading it,
Right. Yeah.
but I still think the people who actually like went through the tough work of generating that content is
Yeah.
probably valuable or more the expert.
Yeah. No, that
Yeah,
makes
because at the
sense.
end of
Yeah.
the day, the person who is consuming
Yeah.
is not the expert, right? If
Yeah.
they're the ones who are actually in the weeds creating that data, creating that content, that
Yeah.
is the expert more than the person who just
Yeah.
read something, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. This is also because we started the podcast, one of myself, because we're huge consumers of podcasts,
Mm.
And we were like, well, I kind of want to be on the other side of not just consuming, but actually producing,
Mm.
because I feel like that's where you can really say, yeah, okay, we know what we're talking
Yeah,
about.
now you can become a podcast expert. You can edit
Exactly.
it. Yeah.
It's so much fun. But I agree. I think that's the difference. Like, you either consume it
Or you create
or you
it.
truly, I guess, look at things and try to come up with extra
New,
data from that consumption.
yeah, new narratives, new
Yeah.
content, new data, I think is more the expert rather than
Mm,
the consumer
yeah.
of the, because you can read all you want. You're not an expert, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing where
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
always like, like, yeah, I don't know. Like, I do believe in the time aspect as well. Or for me, the way I approach everything is like, I'm not gonna really read about something if I'm not willing to dedicate a specific amount of time into it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not gonna call myself an expert, but I get to a point then where I'm like, okay, I'm allowed to have an opinion. If I did
Hmm.
spend X amount of time on the topic,
Yeah, yeah.
I feel like, okay, now I'm allowed to have an opinion. And I
Yeah.
think that's where it's really hard these days, where everyone feels like they have the right to have an opinion on something because it takes them a prompt to
Hmm.
have it in front of them.
Yeah,
And
but it
yeah,
also takes time for humans to, like, I think, synthesize the information, right?
mm,
Like, you need like proper night's rest before you can like make a decision or be able to
yeah,
like form an opinion sometimes, I think. So,
mm,
yeah, I feel like that's the, and
yeah,
I guess that's why for us, like, we want to do the verifications of the content too, because recently I read a story that someone, wrote a research thing online, and then the Ministry of Finance in Japan just copied what he wrote and implemented it,
I saw
right?
that. Yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah,
things like this, right? That the expert is over here,
yeah,
and then these guys now are posing as the expert, right, as consumers.
yeah,
So, I think the history and verifications of content is going to be what's important, and
mm.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. It goes back to like the credibility of like, oh, you're credible now because you have X amount of followers, and how did you
yeah,
get that in the first place? And like, oh, now you're an expert because you have X amount of followers. This whole thing has to change.
yeah, yeah,
We're
yeah.
going there for sure. One final segment question is like, what advice would you give to other entrepreneurs in crypto, Web3, in that space actually, like to get started? Like, what kind of advice would you give them?
Yeah. Um, I mean, I think it's great to be interested in all the investment stuff, but I definitely encourage people to dig a little bit deeper. Definitely as like a first step is like go to some events and network with some people, meet some of the people to understand what people are building,
Mm,
beyond what you read online, right? To actually get involved. I think it's also really easy to reach out to people now and connect with them on Telegram, Discord. So join some communities, both like online and offline. Um, subscribe to some, uh, there's like, different VCs writing different reports all the time. I think those are pretty useful to kind of get a sense of the market. Um,
mm.
yeah, those are.
Just get curious basically about what's really behind those words, and
Yeah,
not
yeah,
just
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah. Um, and also there's like I said, I keep saying Web3 is for everyone, right? Because everyone's piqued by different areas of curiosity, right? Um, some people are very much curious on like the technical aspect of how distributed systems work, right? There's a trend coming up with decentralized science, right? Of like genome data, right? So we have a whole
decentralized
science,
science.
DeSci. We have like
DeSci.
DeSci coming up. We have right now DePIN, which is like decentralized physical infrastructure networks, right? So there's
Interesting.
there's like DeSci, DePIN,
Mm,
um, consumer, decentralized social. Like if you care about how much X sucks, right? There's
boom.
decentralized Instagrams, right? There's then there's like more structured products, DeFi, stable coins, really like, I mean, there's like if whether you're an artist, right? There's
Yeah.
also like, different art forms, fundraising forms, ways to
Mm,
get more distribution for your art. There's tons of things out there for everyone now, whether it's music. So I just named so many different topics, but
yeah.
there's this place for anyone's curiosity,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's not going to be one place, I mean, where you can kind of find all of this, but
Yeah.
whatever industry you're in, I believe there's a place for you. Yeah.
Probably start with an actual passion you already have, and then look at it from
Yeah,
the
like think, okay, like yeah, if you're in the finance space and
yeah
you're a trader, you naturally could look
yeah
at some market makers.
like you say,
Yeah.
for an artist, like a songwriter or whatever, like how can you actually own more of the distribution of
Yeah,
your
yeah.
craft
Yeah,
and
yeah.
like
And there's quite a bit of like on-chain music solutions where you can upload your music and you have an entire new audience,
yeah
right? If you're today just uploading on Spotify, why not try some of these decentralized music platforms and see if you get some traction? Because there's few people looking at that and they're going to
yeah
become much more hardcore fans. The
mm,
competition's lower, right? If you're in these
yeah
new solutions, and you can be early to a lot of these different apps that are out there too.
yeah
And just by being early, you increase your credibility too.
yeah yeah I think in general the way I look at it from everything you said is like just caring more about the ownership of who you are and what you put out there is probably going to
Hmm.
lead us to that
Yeah,
intense curiosity.
yeah. Wherever you spend the most amount of time in apps, whether it's reading content, consuming, or posting,
Hmm.
maybe you can look for alternatives on a more decentralized way,
Yeah.
right? If you're the biggest consumer of X, I'd recommend you check out Warpcast. If you're the biggest consumer of TikTok, I recommend you look at Dracula. If you're a big music lover, there's like Coop Records you can follow. Um, but
I
if
haven't heard of any of those platforms.
okay,
Yeah.
so
But I'm happy you're dropping them.
okay.
Thank you.
So there's, like I said, there's really apps for almost everything now. There's even ride sharing, like there's on-chain ride sharing now, which is also kind of cool.
Interesting.
They've released during token. So I'd say experiment, try these apps out.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think that's what you're doing out there, right? You spark people's curiosity and
Yeah.
awesome.
And,
Of-
and and
mm,
and I think another part of it is like we're trying to be the LinkedIn, right, for any kind of occupation, any type of person. So naturally, we want those companies and individuals working on these things to also be visible in a way that makes people realize, oh, I could find, there is a company out there doing this, or
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I can use my skills to do this. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's you guys have a broader vision than this. We're not going after this or this companies. Like we're trying to build the right infrastructure for the future where we're already going
Hmm.
without you.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. Tradition on the podcast is a few rapid fire questions as well, and
Okay.
then there's like five, and then a bit deeper questions to wrap it up.
Okay.
If you could instantly master any skill, what would you choose?
Uh, the first thing that came to mind was negotiation. I think everything in life is like a negotiation, so becoming better at that is like a big skill I definitely want to work on.
I like it.
Yeah,
Yeah, a little bit an easier one here. Dogs or cats?
dogs.
Dogs. Not financial advice, but Bitcoin price in 2025.
Oh, definitely 100K
Nice.
plus.
Just for that, I will keep hodling. Uh, if you could solve one issue instantly in the world, what would it be?
Instant problem. Ooh,
A problem and an instant solution that you could go for.
yeah. I mean, I think instant problem, I think, is just like, literacy, education, right? So kind of being able to distribute that immediately to people that might not have access to it. I think that would be
Mm,
best. Yeah.
more
And
fair
draw and
world.
yeah, and kind of yeah, driving more people's curiosity to like learn more, right?
You
Yeah.
awesome. Again, an easy one here. Go to karaoke song.
Go to Sekai Ichi Dake no Hana, the SMAP song.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm nodding, but I don't know.
Okay, okay.
Okay. A little bit.
It's 世界一つだけの
Ah,
花.
okay,
That one.
okay.
Yeah.
Got you. Actually, I know.
Yeah.
My wife is Japanese. She loves karaoke, so
Okay.
I do know now.
Okay.
Kindest thing someone has ever done for you.
Kindest thing someone has ever done for you. Man, people do a lot of kind things. Kindest thing. I mean, very simple one, but recently, like, I'm moving back to Japan, really needed a couch. and I had to go pick up a couch in Meguro. So I just called my friend immediately, "Hey, can you come help me and get this couch in Meguro?" And he came within minutes. So I think I have a lot of good friends that, will help me out on call right away. So that's great.
Love it.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, it can be simple, like you
Yeah.
said. Like, and the best advice you have ever received.
Best advice. Um, I think just always be yourself is like probably the best advice because if you always just remain authentic and truly to who yourself, then you will also attract and also dissuade the right people into your life. Yeah.
Love it.
Mhm.
Couldn't agree more.
Mhm.
Marisa, absolute pleasure. Also, please, we want to offer you our beautiful mug
Oh,
so you can
thank you.
keep it. But yeah, thank you so much for the talk. It was amazing.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Cheers.